Hello, Internet friends, and welcome back to another episode of Go Ask Alice, the show where we jump down random Internet rabbit holes and bring you wonderful factoids from our adventures in Wiki Wonderland. I'm Drew, and I can solve 2/3 of a Rubik's Cube. With me is...
I'm Lindsay, and I have resting friend-making face.
And I'm Sarah, and I've just discovered chai lattes, and I'm addicted.
The premise of this show is that we all start out on the same page on Wikipedia, and we click around until we find something that we find interesting. We can't cheat, and we can't read the first sentence of every paragraph, and it just so happens that if we read 2 or more paragraphs, we have metrically found that it is interesting. So we prepare it ahead of time and present it to each other and to all of you.
That's right, but before we get started, it is time for Question of the Week. This week's question is, what is your favourite conspiracy theory? Drew, you can go first.
Ooh, I can go first? Okay, well, my favorite conspiracy theory is that birds don't exist.
I have seen the flyers.
So, is this the theory that the birds are like secretly spy drones?
Yes, that all birds are secretly spy drones and that there are no birds that exist. It's just spying.
Just spying.
I believe part of this is that the government killed all real birds,
Oh my God.
right? And replaced them.
Yes.
I wouldn't put it past the US government.
Oh my God. So if you have a seagull looking sus at you, you can just be like, that's a drone.
That's a spy. Well, did you guys ever play the Simpsons Hit and Run video game? Because
Oh my God,
the
yes.
bees. The bees
Yeah.
were the spy cams.
I think that's such a deep cut. I can't believe you remember.
Oh,
That's-
that was my life. I loved that game so much.
Oh.
Me too.
Oh my God. I didn't expect a memory from the GameCube to come back and haunt me.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
All right.
Go on.
I was gonna say, I think that's a pretty great conspiracy theory. That's wild. Do you believe it, or do you just?
No,
think
not
it's
at all.
insane?
Not at all. I just think
Okay.
it's funny.
Good. Sorry, I just had to check.
No, I believe it 100%.
All right, Lindsay, what is your favorite conspiracy theory?
So this one is my favorite because I was involved in it.
What?
Partially. It was. That sounds more interesting than it is. I believed it,
Okay.
Oh, okay.
and then I came to understand that it was false.
Okay.
It came to me in a news headline in 2017 that the LAPD had been called to perform a house call on Milton Teagle Simmons. But as everybody else knows him,
I don't know who that is.
Richard Simmons.
Oh, Richard Simmons.
Ah, okay,
His
yeah.
real name is Milton Teagle. Yeah.
That makes sense.
And this is my favorite conspiracy theory because it's a lot of fact mixed with fiction. Like, there are true parts of it and there are fake parts of it. And the whole reason that the LAPD had to perform a house call in 2017 is because one day in 2014, Richard Simmons just straight up stopped teaching at his classes at his gym called Slimmons. He just didn't show up. Just one day he didn't show up, and then it was completely radio silent. And one of his former students actually made a podcast about like finding Richard Simmons because he just completely disappeared. Like, he used to be really flamboyant and like, you know, crazy in his sparkles and like feathers and boas, like with fans and stuff like that, just completely disappeared. So the LAPD had to come do a house call because people believed that he died and that other people were pretending to be Richard
Oh my
Simmons.
God.
And like, one of my favorite things about this is that like the other theories that sprung up were like one of his close friends was telling people that he was bewitched by a witch's black magic. And then like another person firmly believed that his housemaid was holding him hostage. And then the National Enquirer wrote that he was becoming, quote, a softly spoken woman named Fiona.
Oh.
They were all over the place. And even Trump on the campaign trail, I didn't know this because obviously I didn't follow Trump's campaign trail, but apparently he even like started campaigning that he promised to liberate Simmons.
No,
Oh my
no
God.
way. No way.
Yes. And so what like really fanned the fire was that the police went to go check up on him, But then it was only the police who came back and said he's fine. Like, it was like never Simmons who was like, oh yeah, I'm still alive. It was the police were like, oh, he's fine. And then Simmons or his estate posted to his Facebook account, but it was with like, it was like saying, hey, I'm alive and fine. But it was with a picture from 2013. So everyone was like, he might very well be dead.
Oh my God.
And, I mean, like, honestly, I think the truth is that he's like in his 60s and tired. Well, now he's in his 70s, but like tired of being famous and like really high energy and just like wants people to leave him alone. But he just very, very, very suddenly left. And what was interesting was, as I was looking this up to double check that this really fucking happened, I saw that like the most recent activity from him was that he actually, or his estate, posted videos to his YouTube account to help people stay fit during the pandemic. But again, like, that could have not been him. So I don't know where
So he wasn't in the videos.
Well, they are pre-recorded videos from a super long time ago, but now they're just like being offered for free on his YouTube channel. But like, anyone could do that.
Yeah, anyone could. It didn't have to be him. Oh my God.
It doesn't sound as crazy as I thought it was gonna be.
No, I was so intrigued in 2017. I like saw that headline and I was like, wow, this is really plausible. But I think that's where conspiracy theories get you, is that it could be plausible. I mean, it probably is that he's alive and just wants to be left alone. But it was one that I briefly believed.
Oh, that's amazing. So do you believe it anymore?
No, actually, after digging, there were very few times that he resurfaced and said, like, I'm fine, but I really just want to be left alone. And I think family said the same thing. But people just keep pushing.
This poor man.
Yeah, I actually ended up, after double checking that this really happened, I actually felt really bad for him. So I would also like to leave him alone. I'll let him be alive or dead or whatever he wants.
Okay.
Whatever he wants.
Whatever he wants.
Whatever he chooses to be.
What about you, Sarah?
Okay, so one of my favorite conspiracy theories is that the moon doesn't exist, which sounds ridiculous, but so I had kind of vaguely heard of it, but it wasn't until the other day I was scrolling on TikTok, and legitimately there was like several videos in a row that were people filming the moon and like supposedly seeing it glitch. So I think they think it's like a Truman Show type like projection on the sky, which I thought was just amazing. And so I don't know if anyone believes it, but if they do, that is absolutely wild.
What motivation would there be for having a fake moon?
I don't know. I saw somewhere that it was like the government's trying to control you. And I'm like, okay, but like there's recorded history of like all ancient civilizations referencing the moon.
But also the tides.
Yeah, exactly. What about tides and like king tides when the moon is closer to us? And no, I think it's a load of bullshit, but I think it is a fun conspiracy that people are going down the rabbit hole.
Oh man, and you can never prove it to them. You can never just put them on the moon and be like, look,
exactly.
Here.
Look, it's here. You're on it. They'd be like, oh, I'm on another planet.
I love that. It's just like one step wilder than the we didn't go to the moon conspiracy. It's like, no, the moon doesn't exist at all.
Yeah, exactly. At least people in that case are willing to admit that a moon exists.
Yes, exactly. So that would be mine. Not a biggie, not as wild as the Richard Simmons, and not as unplausible, I think, as the birds. I don't know. I think it would be easier for the government to fake a moon than it would to replace all birds with security cameras.
All those birds. Yeah.
Yeah, so we want to hear our listeners' conspiracy theories. So you can go over to our Twitter account, Go Ask Alice Pod, and interact with us and tell us your favourite conspiracy theories, whether you believe them or not. No judgment here, but we'd just like to hear them. Okay, so shall we dive into today's wiki page?
Yeah, so Sarah, you chose the wiki page this week. What did you choose?
I did. I chose the wiki page for cactus because I really like cactuses.
I mean, who doesn't?
I think they're just underrated.
How many clicks did you diverge from cactus?
Oh, This is amazing. Only 3.
Wow. Okay. Drew,
Yeah.
how many clicks away did you end up?
I ended up at 5 clicks.
I'm at 12.
Above and beyond.
That's incredible.
Hard to please.
And you were worried we were going to end up on the same page.
Yeah, right?
We could have. We really could have.
Theoretically,
I'm
that is true,
interested.
yeah.
Sarah, where did you end up?
I ended up on curse tablets.
Oh God, I can't wait.
I love them.
Oh my God. Drew, where are you? I'm salivating. Drew, where are you?
Ew. I ended up on Mimics from D&D.
Oh.
I don't know what that means. I should know what that means. Drew and I are in a D&D campaign together.
Yeah.
We have been for like 4 years now.
Oh my God.
I don't know what that means.
I love D&D. I'm in 2 at the moment, but it's a wild ride. I love it. And what was yours, Lindsay?
I ended up, I'm only going to say it's a ghost story.
Ooh.
Where the hell do we start?
Should Drew go first this week?
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
Little round robin.
Little round robin. And then, so who goes second?
I want to hear the ghost story really badly.
So do me, Lindsay, then Sarah?
Sounds good.
All right. So Mimics from D&D. So I started
Yeah.
at Cactus, of course, and I went from that to Spines and Thorns. Then I did Plant Defense Against Herbivores. Then I got to Mimicry, and then I got to Disambiguous Mimics. And then from Disambiguous Mimics, I got to the Mimics from D&D.
That's amazing.
So,
that is an amazing roller coaster.
Oh my god. Yeah, it was a roller coaster. So I'm not sure how many games, tabletop or otherwise, you two play, but one of the very common tropes in games is the idea of trap creatures. And of course, mimics are at the center of this concept. So basically what a mimic is, it's a creature that can disguise itself as a common object with the purpose of tricking someone or something into interacting with it, and then thereby springing the trap. So the most common of these is a fake chest, where the mimic pretends to be a wooden chest, so that when an unfortunate adventurer tries to open the chest, they are in the mimic's clutches. So the first iteration of the mimic as a trap creature dates back to 1977, where it was introduced in the monster manual of the first edition of Dungeons & Dragons. The mimic in this iteration could change its shape and color to match any object, and once touched could produce an adhesive strong enough to hold the victim. The mimic would then bludgeon the victim with its pseudopodia, or tentacle-like protrusions. I like that word, pseudopodia.
That's a great word.
Basically would attach to you and beat you to death. And the danger these creatures presented to a solo adventurer makes dungeons just a little bit more scary, as even the loot itself could be dangerous and not just the dungeon around it. And these are absolutely my favorite creature in Dungeons & Dragons. I love mimics because, they're in so much other media, and I really wanted to figure out, where they come from, because there's so many other games, there's so many other books, anything, tabletop RPGs that have mimics, and I really wanted to get to this, where do mimics come from, because I feel like it's such an omnipresent thing, so I began digging.
It's like the ultimate villain that can blend in with anything and get you at any time. I love it.
Yeah, it's like it's truly a trap that just kind of sits there and waits for you, and you're just like, oh, great loot, and then you just touch it, and it just has you in its clutches, and then just beats you to death,
with
its tentacles.
With its tentacles, yeah. It's
amazing.
funny, the image had this little tentacle with a fist at the end of it. Loved it.
Is this where it comes from, though? I would be surprised if it was, to me that sounds like a very modern idea. Is this really where it comes from?
So the idea of a mimic itself, the creature itself, is from the 1977 Dungeons and Dragons. But let's get into where it actually comes from, because that's where I got to.
Cool.
So let's start with the idea of nature, or not the idea of nature. Let's start with
another conspiracy
nature. What a
theory.
concept!
The idea of nature.
Okay, so let's start with nature, as this idea is as old as the predator and prey dynamic. So this type of mimicry is called aggressive mimicry, which is also compared to the story of a wolf in sheep's clothing, which we'll get to later. But basically the idea is to present oneself as something innocuous in order to have the prey let its guard down and then attack, of course.
This is like Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Disguising oneself as a normal human. Yeah, there you go.
Yes. Pretending, like, what did he used to do? He used to wear a fake cast to look vulnerable.
Oh,
He's
that's
just a mimic in real life.
He's a mimic in real life. I don't like that. Oh.
No, me neither. Good riddance.
Yeah, good riddance. So this is, of course, a scene throughout the natural world as, you know, a predator can't simply just walk up to prey without having some kind of ploy. So, yeah, let me just put you in my stomach, you know. There has to be something that the predator does. So I'm sure we can all think of examples, but here are a few of my favorites. So,
Okay.
Anglerfish and alligator snapping turtles both use little lures.
Yes.
So,
Anglerfish are so incredible.
yeah, they're weird. They're so weird. Their whole mating thing is so weird too.
We're not going to talk about it.
Yeah, the male anglerfish like fuses himself to become like a bag of testes on the side of the female.
Yeah. Yep, 100%.
It's wild.
That's anglerfish mating.
I love it.
And
They're weird little creepies.
It could even do it with more than one male, so it could just have like a bunch of just but that's mating, and we're talking about eating.
Yes.
So anglerfish and alligator snapping turtles both have little lures that they put out that, you know, a little fish is like, oh great, this is like a little fish that I can eat, and then just like finds jaws at the end of it. So that's a form of aggressive mimicry. Then there's Venus flytraps, use brightly colored leaves to pretend to be flowers to attract insects. So, you know, flowers are very brightly colored, so Venus flytraps leave the inside of their, you know, quote unquote mouths to be very colored, and then, you know, flies are like, oh, this is great, and then, you know, the fly trap closes, and, you know, that's history. So finally we get back to my boys, the cleaning fish.
Yeah, I
So
love
there are
the cleaning fish.
Oh, from last time.
There are fake cleaning fish that look exactly like the regular cleaning fish, but instead take huge bites out of the host fish that's being cleaned, and then flees before the host fish can figure out what happened. So it ruins the whole relationship of host and cleaning fish, because it just like bites the host fish and just like, I'm out. And then the host fish is like, what the hell just happened? Yeah, right?
Oh, that's so sad.
so
He's like,
rude.
I'll never trust again.
I'll never trust again. I'm never coming back here. Oh, yeah. So that's it in nature. And those are a few of my favorite examples. So now let's move on to folklore.
Yeah.
As I mentioned before, the story of wolf in sheep's clothing is often used to equate to aggressive mimicry, and this story roots in biblical writings in which Jesus, during the Sermon on the Mount, described being aware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravaging wolves, or raving wolves, sorry.
I don't know.
Ravening wolves,
I don't know
God.
why. I thought you were going to tell me that Jesus dressed up in like sheep's clothing or something like that.
Jesus, to get more followers. Clothing.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I have an image of Jesus in like a sheep, and he's just like, beware of sheep.
Yeah, like, I don't know why I can picture him with like a sheep carcass over his shoulders.
Oh, Jesus.
Trying to blend in. Yeah. Sorry, please continue.
Enough blasphemy for us.
It's enough for one day.
Enough for one day. So the first fable concerning a wolf disguising itself as sheep came to us in the 12th century by the Greek writer, here we go, Nicephorus Basilakis.
What a name.
In his work called Progymnasmata, which is rhetorical exercises. And basically the story goes that a wolf takes the disguise of a sheep and is locked in with the sheep during the night, but is killed by the shepherd when the shepherd wants to have sheep for supper. So basically the shepherd finds the wolf just sitting in the pen, and is just like, what are you doing here? And just stabs it. And that's the story. So there are quite a few other variations of the story of wolves in sheep's clothing throughout history, and it's just like this idea of a dangerous creature disguising itself as something innocuous is just seen throughout historical writings, which I found very, very interesting. And that was kind of like what I would call the basis of a mimic is that. But now let's actually get into monsters in folklore, my favorite part. So in medieval folklore, there's an animal called a mimic dog, which is a wild dog that could perfectly mimic human speech, behavior, and motions.
I want it as a pet.
Yeah, right? So these dogs ended up being fun dogs to have in courts and are not inherently dangerous, but other creatures, such as the crocata, which is another medieval creature, could mimic human cries for help in order to lure people close enough to be eaten. Now let's move to Slavic mythology. So there's the concept of the Leshy. So these creatures usually appear as tall men, but have the ability to change their size and shapeshift into any form, plant or animal, and can even shrink to the size of a blade of grass or grow to the size of a tree. It is commonly understood, and this is from an article, commonly understood that leshies will lead peasants astray, make people sick, and even tickle them to death. And yes, I said tickle them to death.
Oh no.
So these creatures being tickled to death.
I get very serious when I'm tickled. I'm like, do not fucking touch me.
So these creatures are terribly mischievous and have horrible cries. However, leshies can also imitate human voices and oftentimes lure lost wanderers into their caves to be tickled to death, which I find so funny. They aren't always evil, but do enjoy misguiding humans and kidnapping young women. So there you go. There's leshies, or
They aren't always evil.
They're not always evil, but they love kidnapping young women.
They just dabble in some kidnapping.
Boys will be boys.
Boys will be tickle you to death. Well, they're protectors of the forest. So if you mess with the forest, then you're gonna meet a leshy. You're gonna get the tickle.
I kind of like that idea.
Getting tickled to death?
Get a tickle to death. We should bring that back.
Bring that back. Okay, so selkies are another creature. They're found in Icelandic, Irish, and Scottish mythology, and basically they're very similar to mermaids, but they can transform themselves completely into humans by shedding their seal skin. And shedding their seal skin is often dangerous to them because they have to reapply the same skin that they had shed in order to return to their original form. And if someone would take control of a selkie's seal skin, try saying that 5 times fast, selkie seal skin, the selkie would be under their control. But like mermaids, they have also been known to lure humans into the sea using illusions and false sense of reality to pull them into the ocean. So very similar to mermaids in common folklore.
Like the mermaid song.
Yeah, exactly.
You can see why Disney didn't go with the sulky for
yeah.
my Little Mermaid. What's the mermaid?
The little
mermaid.
Oh, My Little Mermaid.
The cinematic classic, My Little Mermaid.
Oh my god, it's just combining two things. That's awful. Yeah, it's like the Little Mermaid with a ponytail. But yeah, she would have been a lot creepier to the prince if she was like hauling her fins around with her to keep him safe.
Yeah, keep him safe. You got to pull my sealskin around with me. Ugh. I think that wouldn't have gone so well.
Yeah.
But they would lure people into the ocean, and that was their big thing. And I guess they would use illusions and things to really bring people close to the ocean and then just grab them and pull them in. Finally, the last creature that I looked into was the Sukumongami from Japanese folklore. And these are common household objects that are being occupied by a spirit. And these objects, once they reach their 100th birthday, become alive and self-aware, which is funny.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
And these objects were given the power to change themselves once they were occupied with a spirit, and they would often play pranks on people, but if they became angry, they could take revenge on people for mistreating them or even throwing them away before their 100th birthday. Which is great.
This sounds like a hoarder's excuse for keeping a lot of things in their house. It's like, no, I need to keep it all. They're not 100 yet.
They're not 100 yet. Well, they would
Sarah.
They would get rid of stuff before it hit 100 because I was scared. Like they were scared of it. They didn't want to. They didn't want it to become possessed.
Oh, so it wasn't like a friendly spirit.
No. It was. Well, it was friendly because it would only play pranks on you, but it wasn't. Something you'd want in your house because it's like now your shovel is just flying around and being a nuisance. I wouldn't want that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's better if somebody else had that shovel when it's
Yeah. So there are some very well-known tsukumogami in Japanese folklore that have legends to themselves, but I really want to get back to mimics. So let's get back to mimics themselves. So the co-creator of D&D, Gary Gygax, what a name.
Oh, we know Gary.
Gary.
We know Gary.
So
Gygax.
he created these creatures with two basic archetypes. Wow, archetypes? Jesus. Archetypes. And the first was just a big, dumb, eat anything that touches me mimics, which, as the description implies, would literally eat anything that touches them without so much as a second thought. Then there are the smaller, more intelligent mimics that could be bargained with using food, but these kinds of mimics are not often represented in media. And
wait. So if I slap this chest with a slice of bologna first, I might be fine.
Yeah, you might be fine. It depends on what kind of mimic. If it's like a smaller one, then it might, you might be fine if you hand it bologna. But if you don't, then you're losing an arm, or getting bludgeoned to death. Oh my God! Smack! By a big old tentacle. So there are even whole ecologies of mimics. So this was written by Ed Greenwood, which provides reasoning as to how mimics are able to change their shape and color. It was like, they can use this pigment throughout their skin, and it was just a really cool actual ecology of mimics. It felt very scientific, but it was just like, this is a mimic at the end of the day. And in this article, it describes that mimics observe their surroundings with very sensitive eye spots, which is patches of pigments that are sensitive to light, heat, and vibration, which is just it makes it seem like an actual animal all over its skin. And this is why mimics are not seen in places with natural light, as they would not be able to see in direct sunlight. So the funny thing,
there's a real science.
Yeah, it's like an actual science behind mimics. And
I love it.
The funny thing is that mimics are not actual natural creatures in D&D. They are created by wizards that are wanting to protect themselves from treasure hunters. So even mimics are not natural creatures. They're created, which I just found very, very funny. And yes, there are several.
That makes sense. Though.
Yeah, that they don't naturally occur. That it's actually someone wanting to protect themselves.
Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
So there are several different varieties of mimics. There's the metal mimic, which can, of course, mimic metal objects. There's a thing called a space mimic, which naturally uses magic and will disguise itself as pieces of ship or furniture. And they can even cast illusory magic to draw in victims. And weirdly, space mimics have two eyes that they hide under thick eyelids. So it's just imagine a chair with just two eyes just sitting there staring at you.
I love it. That's amazing.
And they naturally have an interest in magic items as well as food. So I just found that interesting about them, that they're not just food motivated. They're like, oh, I want a magic item. So I'll, eat a wizard for that.
They're like the shiny things.
Yeah, exactly. And then finally we have greater mimics, which are my favorite, which are literally can mimic full rooms, including furnitures, paintings, and can even create fake.
Oh my God.
They can even create fake NPCs that you can talk to before it starts slamming the walls of the room down on you.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
That is so metal.
It's just like this it's like this room that you're just sitting in, and then all of a sudden it just starts bam, 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 slamming walls down on you.
Oh, this sounds like a nightmare.
Do you think that at Mimic conventions they talk and trade interior design ideas? Yeah, I go a little Art Deco with my decor. I prefer Gregorian architecture.
I like to set a nice fire, make them feel comfortable.
And then start slamming my walls down.
I feel that 35 seconds is the appropriate time before I get sticky.
Before I get sticky and you get slammed. Oh my God. Yeah, I would assume at Mimic conventions they're probably talking about notes. Yeah, they trade notes on how best to capture people.
Make sure to only use fabrics locally sourced so as not to raise their suspicion.
We must match the decor of where we are. But yeah, to basically sum up Mimics, it's funny that they've appeared in all iterations of the D&D Monster Manual. They've never been left out, which I found very interesting. And they've been seen in all kinds of different media. And one of my favorite media, Dark Souls, actually has these great mimics that just like grab you and eat you, which is just a ton of fun. And I absolutely love them.
Ton of fun. I love it.
Ton of fun. And although the mimics may not have direct roots to folklore, the idea of hiding something innocuous, hiding as an innocuous object, has been seen throughout history and nature. And I just love mimics, and I really wanted to look into them more deeply. So yeah, that's mimics for you.
That's awesome. That's so cool that you could get there so quickly from cacti.
I know, I'm amazed. That's incredible. That is very, very cool. I love the history behind like something hiding in plain sight in folklore. I think that's great.
I also feel that the more I learn about Gary Gygax's history in creating Dungeons and Dragons, like I'm constantly amazed at, like it's clear that there's not just cultural and historical like inspirations, but also like from nature. Like, you know, that you're saying that really this idea is as old as nature itself.
Yeah.
And it's just, to me, like the fascinating aspect is that this has become a motif that has transcended like nature and into culture.
Yeah, that is incredible.
And then into the realm of fantasy. Like really this is like one of those bridges of science fiction.
Yeah, and I really like the ecology of mimics, how they kind of really tried making it scientific. You know, how they really did make it a scientific study on mimics, and it felt really cool to just be like, oh, okay, you know, that checks out, you know, that they have these pigments that they can put through their skin, and they have these little like eye spots.
Right, like a mechanic.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's an actual like mechanic behind it. And it felt so cool.
Yeah, listening to your like exposition of them reminded me of when I was a kid and reading like the Harry Potter books and the way that the classes were structured in the Harry Potter world and what they were studying. Like, you know, there's that day that was all about like mandrake roots, and then there's like these potions. Like this is that, like that's what this felt like, is like learning like the history of mimics, or like the science of mimics, this like totally fictional thing. Felt like, I don't know, this is like what magic,
a
like,
real class.
Yeah, like this is the kind of thing that wizards learn on like really a mundane Tuesday.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very whimsical. Darkly whimsical.
Darkly whimsical. But yeah, mimics, I love them. They're great.
So cool. Have you ever come across one?
In
D&D?
what?
Yeah, not in real
no.
life, in D&D.
So I was like, no, I haven't. We actually haven't come across a mimic. Well, I think we were close to a few mimics, but never came across them officially.
Yeah, me neither. I want to now.
Who was supposed to go next?
You were. We want to hear your ghost story. Is it like a poltergeist?
Okay, yeah. So you could say that this ghost story is a poltergeist, because I guess poltergeists kind of by definition affect physical things.
Ooh,
right?
Okay. I'm excited. Tell us about your topic.
I'm going to tell you guys the legend of the Cock Lane ghost, named Scratching Fanny.
Oh my god. Okay, I can't wait to hear it. Why is it called the Cock Lane ghost? Is it like, does it involve real cock, or is it a literal street name?
Real cock.
So I actually did do extra research to figure this out.
Okay.
I had immediately the same question. What does this have to do with chickens?
Cock.
So this takes place in London. Where else would you get stupid names like this?
Mm-hmm.
It takes place in London. So there's this market that still exists called Smithfield, and actually, like, the etymology of the name Smithfield comes from Smoothfield. And it turns out that in about like the 1500s, the area outside of this London like center was smooth fields, like quite literally, and it had like a ton of livestock. So the area became a meat market, And I think this is so quaint. They had streets that were literally named. So there was Cock Lane, where they would sell chickens. And there was Cow Cross Street. There was Goose Alley, Pheasant Court. So the area developed historically as a meat market in the 1500s, and some of the names stuck around, and unfortunately the worst name prevailed. And so our ghost story takes place in the year 1762.
Ooh, okay.
So the man, really the like central protagonist of the story is this guy named William Kent. I'm going to talk about him a lot, so let's just call him Kent, like his last name.
Okay.
He falls in love, not in London, but in one of like the rural areas around London. He falls in love with this woman named Elizabeth. And Elizabeth, unfortunately, dies in childbirth, like normally happens.
Aww.
And their son lived for like a teeny while, and then their son died.
Oh, that's so sad.
Of course. If we're going to have a ghost story, it's going to begin with...
It's got to be sad. Yeah, it's got to be sad.
Yeah, of course.
So Kent is devastated by the fact that his wife and son die, but maybe not too devastated because he kind of very quickly falls in love with Elizabeth's sister, Frances, whose nickname was Fanny.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So now we have a Fanny.
Yes, I see where the Fanny has come from.
All right, now that we've exposed the Fanny, so they couldn't get married, Kent and Fanny, because of canon law, which is just like basically this religious law saying if you married like one person in the family, you can't marry another person in that family. And they had like kind of tried to overrule this, but then when like priests saw that there at one time was a living son, they were like, absolutely not. You cannot be with Fanny.
Oh, wow. That's a bit harsh.
Yeah, so it was very strict. Yeah. So in kind of the like rural areas, they become a little bit of like an outcast. They become a bit ostracized, and Kent gets really depressed. So he's like, fuck it, I'll like move to London and just like start a new life there. And Fanny, in the meanwhile, starts writing him a bunch of very passionate, racy love letters, and he's like, fine, you can come hang. So she comes with him to London, and at some point, like, I think that maybe like Fanny's family also did not like. I think that they were kind of on the side of the law that was like, this is not natural, this shouldn't happen. So it didn't really go into why, but the article was saying that at one point Kent and Fanny were living together, and they got kicked out of where they were living because presumably Fanny's family told the landlord that something illegal was going on in their relationship.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
This is
Yeah.
Scandalous.
It was very scandalous, exactly, for the time. And I guess that they were still religious. So they're in London, and they were one day just kind of like, I guess, talking amongst themselves about their problems. And the clerk, Richard Parsons, he's also going to come up a lot. So I'll just refer to him as Richard.
Okay.
So we've got like Kent and Richard now. So Richard overhears them and feels bad for them. And so he offers the couple lodgings at his place. Now, in the town, Richard was like respected, but everybody knew that he was a drunk and that he was poor. So it just so happens that Kent's career really is loaning money.
Very convenient.
Yeah, and now that we're getting like sums of money involved, this is where things become controversy, right? Or this is where at least motives start to enter. Yeah. So Kent and Fanny loan Richard about 12 guineas. And at the time, so I ended up doing some extra research. That would be about $3,000 in US dollars and about $4,000 in Australian monies.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, so
it's a hefty sum.
He lends him quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
While he's still like living in Richard's abode, I guess some kind of boarding house of some kind, or just house where everyone's sharing rooms. So while he and Fanny are living there, Kent goes away for a wedding. And Fanny at this point is severely pregnant. And Kent is like, hey, I'm leaving my pregnant wife behind. So Richard, you've got a daughter. Can your daughter hang out with my wife and sleep in her bed?
Oh.
Which I guess was like a normal thing to ask. Confusingly, this daughter... Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Hospitality. I don't know. So Richard's daughter. So Richard is the clerk who has some money issues
Yeah.
and who had borrowed money. So his daughter, confusingly, is also named Elizabeth. So don't get them mixed up. But now she's going to be the main Elizabeth of the story. So Elizabeth starts to sleep with Fanny. Not like that. But they hang out. They hang out all the time. And while they're hanging out, they start to hear around the house weird knocking and scratching.
Oh.
And it freaks them out a little bit. So Elizabeth goes to her mom and she's like, I'm hearing these weird noises. And her mom is like, you fucking idiot. We live next to a cobbler. Like, you're fine. And so she's like, okay, yeah,
checks out.
But then they start to hear them knocking on a Sunday. And the cobbler isn't working on a Sunday. It must be a ghost.
It's a ghost. Naturally.
A normal visitor, like a friend of the family, comes to the house and sees a white apparition ascending the stairs and gets really scared and leaves.
Ooh.
So he like trembling returns home, and then later Richard Parsons goes back and he's like, hey, why'd you leave? And he's like, I saw a fucking ghost in your house. I was really scared. So stuff is kind of mounting to corroborate with the daughter Elizabeth's story that like something a little bit freaky is going on in the house. Not long after, Fanny contracts smallpox. And she is like super pregnant at the time. So she's pregnant and really sick. And she knows that like, even if she, like, there's no way that she's going to survive the two of them at the same time. Like, she's not going to survive childbirth and smallpox.
Yeah.
So she calls over her attorney and she's like, make sure that Kent still gets my estate, even though we're not married. Like, I just want to make really, really sure that this is legitimate, that he's going to get my stuff. And I wouldn't normally get into this, but it becomes important later because Fanny still has living relatives, like actual, like brother, sister relatives who would otherwise inherit her estate. So more motives enter the game once her family realizes that they have been left nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of illegitimate husband gets everything in the will. Basically, everything falls on Kent. And I honestly do feel bad for him, kind of as a spoiler. I have the most sympathy for him. So he has this awkward job now because, of course, Fanny dies. And he needs to get her a coffin. But he can't say...
Does she have the baby?
It didn't say what happened to her baby. I don't know what happened to her baby.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if the baby lived. Like, possibly. Let's err on the side of optimism and say the baby had, like, a really prosperous, happy life. And lived.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That's nice.
He was a multimillionaire for the rest of his life.
A multi-guineaire.
Multi-guineaire. Yeah. He became a famous skydiver.
Yeah, there you go.
He just really loved life. So Kent now, so he has, Fanny has died and he needs to get her a coffin, but like it's still very scandalous, their whole relationship. So he's trying very hard to keep it on the DL. The whole thing that they had. But the person who's trying to sell him the coffin is like, I need a name to put on this. And he's like, I don't have a name for you. And I guess there's like some kind of whole back and forth where Kent finally goes, fine, just put my name on it. Which was the wrong choice because eventually the family finds out.
Like his own name on it.
Put my family name as if we were married.
I see.
No.
Yeah. So here's where more scandal enters and Fanny's family finds out and they're like, you should not have done that. And basically, like, they see this as very offensive to their family.
Oh.
And not only do they find out that, this whole embarrassing relationship has happened, but in that same time, they find out that Fanny has left them nothing. And apparently there was another brother in the family who died and left most of his fortune to Fanny.
Uh-oh.
And so they see this as their brother's fortune got passed to Kent instead of the rest of the family.
Right. I see. And they're pissed, I'm guessing.
They're very upset. Like, they've got a little bit of a vengeance plan. But in the meanwhile, Kent bounces right back and remarries.
Oh, bloody Kent.
Yeah. Maybe this means that the baby survived and he couldn't take care of the baby. Like, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe this means that he needed another, like, live-in maid wife.
Yeah.
Oh, I hope so for the baby's sake, not for the poor live-in maid wife.
I know. Exactly. So right now, like, my story is taking place at about 1761. And it's really 1762 where shit really hits the fan. So
I'm excited.
at this point, Richard Parsons, the guy who owns the property, cannot pay back the loan of like the $3,000 of today's money. So Kent sues him. And Richard, like we were saying, is already like having trouble supporting for his family. And another woman comes to lodge at the house, presumably now that there's space because poor Fanny has died. But this new this new woman also hears the mysterious knocking and scratching, and she's so scared that she immediately moves out.
So it wasn't just the cobbler.
No, because remember it had also happened on a Sunday when the cobbler was not working.
Yeah.
And so she hears this scratching like a cat on a chair.
Like a demon trying to come out of the wall.
At one point, actually, they do remove all the wainscoting in the apartment.
Oh shit.
Yeah. It escalates. So I had mentioned Richard Parsons' daughter, Elizabeth. So the one who was sleeping with Fanny.
With Fanny.
So Elizabeth, who had heard the knocking and scratching before, she's the most afflicted by the hauntings. And they seem to follow her. People in town, so there was like the woman who was lodging, there was the friend who came to visit, like word spreads pretty quickly that this place is very well haunted. Like you were saying, Sarah, like by a poltergeist, like something that has like corroborative evidence of scratching and knocking. And people believed back then kind of generally that if a spirit prevails, then there is a message that needs to be conveyed. So the natural question becomes, what's the message that the spirits are trying to tell everybody? And the story comes about that, or, you know, the rumor comes about that Fanny, when she was alive, was haunted. That first knocking and scratching was her sister Elizabeth, Kent's first wife. And she was warning Fanny that she was about to die.
Oh.
And now Elizabeth she was the first ghost, but now Elizabeth, the kid, is seeing the ghost of Fanny, who is warning everybody that she did not die from smallpox, did not die from childbirth, but was poisoned.
Oh, no.
By her husband for her estate?
Yes.
Oh.
At this point, they bring in an expert. They bring in a local preacher named John Moore. And so John Moore and the father Richard, so John and Richard, kind of devise this plan to have with the ghost that one knock means yes and two knocks means no.
The classic one knock, two knock. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, classic. And so they start to ask Fanny questions about like how she was murdered or how she died. And it was through this process that Fanny, the ghost of Fanny, indicts Kent and accuses him of arsenic poisoning. And at this point, Fanny's family chimes in and says, we never got to see our sister's body because she was boarded up so quickly in a closed casket.
Oh no.
That is suspicious.
Yes.
They're gonna dig her up, aren't they?
Oh, Sarah, you know.
Oh, dig her up.
So before I get there.
Oh, the poor lady.
Before I get there, they at least try more civil practices. And instead they question a former maid of the couple whose name is Esther Carrots Carlisle. She was called Carrots for her red hair.
Oh.
They question Carrots and they ask, like, do you think Kent poisoned your mistress? And she was like, no, I really don't think so. That doesn't sound right. And then they there's like this scene where Carrots is talking to the ghost of Fanny, and through yes or no questions pretty much asks, like, are you mad at me? And the ghost of Fanny replies, yes. And fucking Carrots goes, you must be ashamed of yourself because I've never hurt you in my life.
Get it, girl, get it.
I reckon Carrots has a little bit more to do with the story.
So Carrots, through and through, like, maintains that her master, Kent, never poisoned his wife. She really sticks.
I feel like that's what an accomplice would say, though.
Okay, let's see, because at this point, no one's been indicted yet.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. Everyone's innocent until proven guilty
Yeah.
by a ghost.
I don't know why you'd accuse carrots. Just leave carrots alone.
Sorry.
Leave carrots alone.
Well, as you can imagine, this story gains a ton of traction. And
Yeah.
so, like, local newspapers and magazines are reporting on the Cock Lane ghost. And it's to the point where people are actually trying to attend seances in the house. Like, literal nobility, like lords and ladies are trying to come and, like, sit in on the room when people would ask Fanny questions.
Wow.
And so they would have these parties where they stay up all night and ask Fanny presumably yes or no questions. But what I thought was so fucking funny was that the like attestations against Kent were so powerful that at one point a family friend, like the priest John Moore, says to ask Fanny, ask her if she'll appear in court against Kent.
Oh.
Ask her if she'll testify in court. And a relative of Richard Parsons, like a relative in the family, was like, don't fucking ask that.
Don't do that.
So as more and more witnesses come, some suspicious details start to emerge. So there was one particularly skeptical person who showed up and took a seat right by the edge of the bed. And Elizabeth, Richard's daughter, was like, could you not sit by the edge of the bed?
Oh.
And he said, uh-huh. And he said no.
Oh, no.
So he refused to move, and Fanny did not appear that night until much, much later. So already that's a little bit suspicious.
I'm suspicious.
It was once people started to leave that suddenly some scratching appeared at like 7 a.m. But, you know, that was the first kind of clue. But then what made things a little bit trickier was that the hauntings seemed to follow Elizabeth, Richard Parsons' daughter. And so, like, at one point she's moved to a hospital and the hauntings follow her to a hospital.
I think it's the daughter who is haunting herself.
Yeah. So skeptics are, like, kind of start to catch on. And there's actually like a group of investigators. And I would love to pause here for a moment and tell you that one of the investigators is a well-known meme.
Oh. Yeah,
Really?
you were talking about this.
So I don't know if you know the meme of this man in a powdered wig who's looking at a piece of parchment very close to his face, like confused. I'll have to like post it to our Twitter. There's this man in a powdered wig who looks at something like up close.
Okay,
I first
yes,
saw him
please.
in the like. There's this like video of this guy who's pronouncing pregnant a bunch of different ways from Yahoo Answers, like pregnant and pregnant and stuff.
Pregnant?
Am I pregnant?
We're pregnant. Yes.
So in that video, there's like this brief moment where that meme shows up, and that guy, that portrait of that guy, like he's one of the paranormal investigators. His name is Dr. Samuel Johnson. Presumably, he's famous for many other things, and not just being in a pregnant. The biggest piece of evidence is that there's like one night where they're like, Elizabeth, you have to leave your arms out on either side of your bed tonight. You like your arms always need to be in plain view. And that night, none of the sounds come. And then there's like a separate occasion where some of her maids see her sneaking a small piece of wood. They tell on her, and that piece of wood gets confiscated. And it turns out that this is where the scratching and knocking was coming from, was this piece of wood. But really pressed for questioning, especially like in court, it comes about that her father really put her up to it. But of course, before this happens, just like Sarah predicted,
To get out of the debt?
yeah, yes, kind of in general, because it was also attracting all of these people.
Yeah.
But before they could really do it, because people really firmly believed that this was a haunting. And so to really seal the deal, they had to go open up Fanny's casket.
Oh, no.
Poor Fanny.
Yep. And so, you know, according to the article, the people who did it, like, you know, the priest, Mr. Moore, like opens it up and it's bad. She is like super decayed. And there's no evidence of
Ooh.
arsenic poisoning, and it was just like apparently like the image of it like really stuck with him. So it's like, yeah, this woman is dead, and the like we found the wood like on the daughter. So yeah, like I said, under questioning, the daughter kind of puts the blame on the father and says, you know, he really put me up to it. And the father, I found this so funny. So of course, part of his punishment is that he's kind of like sued for like defamation of character sort of a thing. So
Yeah.
he owes money to Kent because like everybody accused him of being a murderer. So he owes Kent pretty much reparations. So do other people involved. And that totals, at the time it was about 688 pounds, which I converted, it's about 170,000 US dollars and about 220,000 Australian monies.
That's a lot of money.
Crap. It would have just been cheaper for him to pay the original debt.
Yeah, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. But what I thought was so funny was not only did he have this fine, of course he had a few years in prison, but he also was sentenced 3 times to pillory.
What's pillory?
Thank you for asking. Drew, do you know what pillory is?
No, I don't.
I didn't know there was a word for this. It's that old-timey thing where you stick your head and your hands through these wooden holes and just stay there in the middle of town.
Oh my God. People just throw shit at you?
Oh, that's amazing.
You just like, you know, force
People berate you.
Yeah, you're just ridiculed or like rotten tomatoes are thrown at you. So in 3 different months, I don't know for how long, like maybe like a day or a few days, he was sentenced to pillory. But actually people felt so bad for him, or they were still so convinced of the ghost, because this, like I said, was like very popular. Like there were like crowds of people in Cock Lane. People actually like kind of crowdfunded money for him to pay off the defamation. I would really like to put in a plug for the people who work so hard at Wikipedia. You know how I found this actually? This is so bad to our practice, but I didn't read a single thing I clicked on. So what happened was I was on Cactus and I saw like the beautiful kind of anatomical drawings of cacti, and I was like, who the fuck makes these? Like, I want to know whose drawing style this is because it's such a beautiful print. And it had to do with some encyclopedia, and then that encyclopedia went to the author. But then I was in this nonstop loop of like, this guy made the encyclopedia. The encyclopedia was made by this guy. This guy made the encyclopedia, and it just didn't stop. So I went back to Cactus, and I was like, fuck it, I'm not even gonna read anything. And I just clicked on like every link I could find. Which is why I ended up 12 clicks away. But then I saw in the top right-hand corner of this article I was on, the name of the article was "The Worst Journey in the World."
Amazing.
It had to do with an excursion across the Arctic, the Terra Nova expedition. Yeah, so I almost stopped there. But I noticed that this article had something I've never seen before, which was in the top right-hand corner, there was kind of this blue star on Wikipedia. And so I clicked this blue star, and it turns out if an article is featured on Wikipedia, it gains this blue star. And so I was kind of scrolling through other like important Wikipedia articles, and there was an entire section of articles that are posted on April Fool's Day. And yeah, that's where I saw Cock Lane Ghosts, and I was like, obviously I'm going to click on that.
Yeah, of course. How could you not?
Yeah. So really, I can't take the credit for this one. You know, the people behind Wikipedia had found this and really judged its merit before I did. But that's how I ended up getting there.
That's amazing. Good on Wikipedia.
But while we're talking about hauntings, Sarah, tell us about these cursed tablets.
Yes, please.
Oh, yes, this is right. So, yeah, as I said, it only took me 3 clicks to get to my first bit of this topic, which is called the Pella Curse Tablet. And then I did a little bit more reading on the Curse Tablets Wikipedia page. I'm so excited because when I clicked on the Pella Curse Tablet, it's just magical wonderland. And so first, I'll get to it eventually. But first I want to give you a rundown of what a cursed tablet is. So it's not like a pill type tablet. It's like a piece of like either lead or rock with like etchings on it. So it's like back in the ye old days when if you wanted to write something down, you had to etch it into something.
Mm-hmm.
And so, cursed tablets are typically either on thin sheets of lead with the text scratched in tiny letters, and they are often rolled and folded or pierced with nails, and then the tablets are usually placed beneath the ground, either buried in graves or placed on tombs, which I thought was so interesting.
Yeah, to hide it, like on a... Are they like hidden on tombs?
Yeah, so they're either hidden on tombs or they're buried in a grave. And the whole logic behind this is that you want the dead to be able to convey your message with the gods. And so
Oh my god.
Yeah, so these cursed tablets, they're not specific to one region in the world. They are kind of more specific to more of the ancient region. So like a few hundred to a few thousand years BC type era. So from around like Greece, Egypt, Italy.
Oh, wow.
And so one of my favorite types of cursed tablets was the ones that they used to do in ancient Egypt. And these were from around the 12th dynasty. And what you would do if you were an Egyptian you would write the names of all of your enemies on these like clay figurines or on the clay tablets. Then you smash it all up and then you bury it under either like a building or a construction site. So you're like smothering your enemies by smashing them up and putting them under a new building or under a grave, which I thought was just amazing. And
yes,
it made me laugh because it reminds me a little bit of like my nan has always, if someone is on her enemy list or if someone has done her wrong, she'll write down the name on a piece of paper and put it in the freezer.
Oh, really?
Because you freeze out the bad energy in your life. So if someone's being mean to her back in the day, she'd write their name on a piece of paper and put it in the fridge.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, me too. So I thought this was like an amazing type of like, people still do kind of this type of thing in everyday life, but the ancient Egyptians were doing it for the people who piss them off, which I thought was amazing.
I just especially love the image of your grandmother just like getting like all mad and like, calming down, like peacefully writing the name on a piece of paper and slamming the freezer shut
And
into the icebox.
I'm pretty sure that I remember when I was in high school and my best friends at the time were being absolute bitches to me. And so my nan made me write their names down on a piece of paper, and I'm pretty sure that still exists in her fridge or in her freezer.
What solidarity. That is so sweet.
I know. Oh, she's the best. Shout out to my Ning Nang.
Oh, that is very sweet.
So these curse tablets, so they weren't always used to place a curse on someone. So it wasn't always for your enemies. They could also be used to try help the dead. So if you knew someone or there was someone who had died at a very young age or in like a violent manner, you could write them kind of like almost like a nice wish and bury it in their grave. And this was to try help them on the other side or to try bring them peace on the other side, which I thought was really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is really, really cool is that on these tablets, depending on where they were from across the world, they would... So yes, depending on where they were from in the world would depend on who the tablet was being written to. So it could either be written to like an infernal like god, or it could be written to like a god or a goddess such as like Pluto or like Charon, and then sometimes you could write it just directly to the dead person. So
wow,
an example of this was the Pella curse tablet, which is what I originally clicked on, and I thought this was so cool. So the Pella curse tablet dates back to 375 BC, And it was found in the capital of Macedon in 1986, so found quite recently. And so this curse tablet is kind of like a curse / like love spell written on this clay tablet. And it's a magic spell or love charm that was written by this woman who basically is trying to beg the gods not to let the man that she's in love with marry this other woman. And so she's invoking like the demons and like the dead to basically make her lover marry her instead. And that the only way that this can be undone is if she physically digs up the spell to decurse it, which I thought was just a wild ride.
It is a wild ride.
This lady,
she's very sure of herself. Like the level of conviction, I think, is what's so incredible.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I love that this was like she's just taking a chance on the demons and the gods, though, to be like,
yeah, we got you.
God damn it, he's mine. Like, and I feel sorry for her because he obviously wasn't that into her if he was choosing to marry another woman.
Yeah. I mean, poor guy.
I know. And I wish I knew what actually happened to her. Like, did she get to marry the guy? But we'll never know. But the reason we found this was because she buried it in a grave. So she buried it in the grave of this guy who we think his name was Markron. And so in her curse tablet, she calls upon this guy's spirit to help her. And what is unknown is whether she actually knew Markron or whether she just picked a random grave and buried it in there.
Right, that was going to be my question. Yeah.
I feel like if you're going to start digging up someone's grave, you hopefully should know them.
Hopefully know them a little bit.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Could it have been that his name meant something? Like the symbolism in his name?
Yeah, or it could have been one of the, like he might have died tragically, so maybe he had something to prove to the gods. I don't know.
That's a good theory.
But I thought I would read you the curse tablet because it's only 8 lines.
Oh, please.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So I thought I would try to like just preface it because there's some things in here that are wild. So we just got to remember that Markron is the dead guy that she buried this tablet in. Now we think her name was Dagna.
Okay.
And her lover's name was Disophon.
Mm-hmm.
So with that in mind, here is the curse tablet.
Okay.
Of Thermia and Disophon, the ritual wedding and the marriage bind by written spell, and for all other women, both widows and maidens. But of Thalmia in particular, I want to entrust to Markron and the demons that only when I shall dig up this again and unrolled and read this, that she might wed Dalsfon. But not before, for I wish him to take no other woman than me, and that I grow old with Dalsfon, and that no one else. I am your supplicant, which we don't actually know what that word is, so they've just guessed. Have pity on Phila, dear demons, for I am danger, all of my dear ones, and I am abandoned. But this guard, for my sake, that these things do not happen. The wretched Thelmia perishes miserably, but I become happy and blessed. So she's basically saying, fuck that bitch Thelmia. I would like the man. I would like to be happy and blessed. You can be miserable. Which is just wild. And we think that she actually etched this herself because there's a lot of misspellings and kind of like phonetic spelling. So it's written in ancient Greek. And so they think that because there is this kind of, that she's somewhat educated but not educated enough to be able to spell these words correctly, that she would have etched this herself, which is pretty fascinating. Because in some of my digging around in my research, I found that some archaeologists and anthropologists are starting to think that some of these tablets that they have found around the place, so either they've found them across like Italy, Greece, and Egypt, and then places in England like Bath, what they find is that they think these might of being pre-etched a lot of the time. So it was, you know how you can go to the store and buy a birthday card or a condolence card and you just write the person's name and then your name in there. This is basically that, but for curse tablets. So you could buy like a pre-etched tablet and get them to etch the name of who you were trying to curse or who you were trying to bless, which I thought was wild.
Oh my God.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
That someone thousands of years ago had a little shop selling curse tablets.
Oh my God.
Which I think is just amazing.
Oh my God. You could still make so much money right now.
Exactly.
You could
Hallmark is doing it. For well wishes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and so they found that some of these tablets, whoever etched them, like would put their own flair on them. So there's a lot of these words. They call them Voskos mystic words. I can't say it properly, but basically, what it means is that there's these words that are not common in whatever the native language was that they were written in, and so instead of misspellings, they think, because they see these words repeated many times across different tablets, that they were these kind of like made up language that these tablet etchers would just like, it's like sprinkling a bit of pizzazz to pretend that they really were contacting demons with like this made up, godlike demon language. Isn't that cool?
Just to sound smart.
Yeah.
Holy crap. They'd make up stuff so that it seemed more legit. That's funny.
Yeah, pretty much. Like their own language to the gods.
Or like, it's their own branding.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Right. Or yeah, like, if you've had success with this entity that you have either smashed together or made up yourself, then like, only you have that connection or like that is something that sets you apart from your competitors.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, that's so good. And so presumably you would have to go bury it yourself, though?
I think so. I don't think they offered the burial service. I just think it's so crazy that someone would buy, not so crazy that they would buy a curse tablet. That's more believable. But then you're going to go dig up someone's grave and stick it in there, hoping that they can take it to the afterlife.
Was it in the casket, do you know? Or was it just buried in the vicinity?
I don't know for sure. I think it was like more on top of if they were in caskets or in burial rags. I think it was just within the same hole, like pit, that they've found them in. Yeah.
Or are you like crashing someone's funeral and just throwing it in while the hole is open?
Yeah.
You like toss it. It would be like you walk up to a funeral, rip out a page of your diary and toss it in before they sprinkle the dirt.
So I guess people do that, right? Like people will write letters or things to the deceased.
That's true.
And put them in with the grave.
I think it makes sense. I feel like not even if I was alive then, I think I would do this.
That's weird. That's weird to me.
No, like I think if I was obsessed with somebody, I don't know. I think I could see me or like an ancient incarnation of myself being like, I'm obsessed with this person and like not even death is going to stand in my way. Like I feel like I would have been a person to bury one of these things. I think I certainly would.
It's amazing. Well, I think I would have loved to have known more about this woman.
Yeah.
And like what happened. Like what happened? Was she dating this guy or was she just obsessed with him and hated who he had chosen for his wife? But yeah, I wonder what happened. Like I would love to know, did they get married? Or was this woman just miserable for the rest of her life?
It's kind of amazing. Like you always know that there are stories of unrequited love. Like, that's where poetry really comes from. But to think that it could take a turn like that's just so human to me. And it's kind of incredible that this could have existed literally thousands of years ago. This whole idea that's like, I will appeal to the gods for the things that I'm like completely desperate for.
Yeah, absolutely. And most likely because although we don't we pretty much don't know anything other than her probable name. Back then, she most likely would have been young around the time that, like, women would have been wed off, or you would have met your suitable partner. So I can just imagine her as like this young teenager,
like pining,
who is obsessed, pining for this boy, and she can't have him.
That's very
It's
relatable.
Like me at 14, yeah.
appealing to the demons.
Man, like when I was like 14, I used to like steal my crush's erasers and keep them in a box or something. Like this is like if I carved into those erasers and put them in a grave. Like this is like I definitely would have done if somebody put the idea in my head.
In your head.
That's amazing. I didn't steal erasers, but I remember I had this crush for many years when I was very young, like from like age, I don't know, like 7 to 12, like had the crush on the same guy for so many years. But I remember once I wrote him like a card basically being like, I think you're really cool. And I spent so much time like coloring it in with my little pens.
Oh.
But I feel like that would have been similar to how this girl felt.
That is so cute, though.
Oh, so sad.
Imagine,
I don't think he ever realized.
This is a great point, though. Imagine if multicolored pens existed in the time of writing these tablets. Like, it's I curse you, Demetrius.
It's so funny. I love it.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I think that's all I have on these curse tablets. I just thought they were really cool, and especially the one that I stumbled across first, the Pella curse tablet. I feel for this lady or girl, however old she was.
Yeah.
She's just pining.
That is, yeah. Those humans just don't change.
No, not at all.
Well, thanks for hanging out with us, you guys. I hope that you learned something that you'll take away with you. If not as a shower thought, then maybe something that you chat with your friends next time you guys are hanging out. I know personally a lot of these facts stuck with me and kept ringing in my head like, I can't believe that's fucking real. Reality is so much stranger than fiction. If you want to come hang out for more mischief and hijinks, our Twitter is GoAskAlicePod. And we would love to hang out with you and hear about all the places you have ended up, whether it's on YouTube, it's on TikTok, or also on Twitter itself. And clearly Wikipedia is a very fertile ground for very strange things. So thanks for hanging out with us, and we will see you again next week. All of the toilets in my dreams are weird.